Good morning. Welcome again to Telit's IoT Innovation. I'm Jason Hallstrom. I'm with Florida Atlantic University. I have the privilege of directing the Institute for Sensing and Embedded Network Systems Engineering. This is iSense. Telit has been a fantastic partner for FAU. They continue to be a fantastic partner for FAU. And so it's really a great privilege and a treat to have a chance to spend some time talking with you today about the work that Telit and FAU have been doing over the past couple of years. And I have to say, the introduction was so nice, Fred. Fred has seen me speak a number of times before, and despite how some of those events have gone, he invited me back again this year. So if that's not a great partner, I don't know what is. So many thanks to Fred and the Telit team. It's always exciting to be at an event filled with so many people who are excited about the potential of IoT, who are excited about the future of a deeply connected world, who are excited about the transformative impact that it can have. At FAU, we share your enthusiasm. We are excited about IoT. We believe in IoT. We believe in the transformative potential that it has. We believe so strongly in the future of IoT that we're betting our institution's future on it. IoT, and more broadly, sensing and smart systems, is central to FAU's long-term strategic plan of becoming the nation's next great research university. Over the next 10 years, we're going to continue to invest in people. We're going to continue to invest in infrastructure. We're going to continue to invest in our students, continue to invest in programs to build the IoT ecosystem in South Florida across academia, industry, and government. In 2015, iSense was initiated to help coordinate that long-term growth strategy over the next 10 years. And at FAU, we serve two functions. First, we serve as a clearinghouse for sensing, communication, and computing technology for IoT. Second, we serve as a catalyst for interdisciplinary collaboration, for bringing teams together across colleges, across campuses, across academia, industry, and government to focus on the grand challenge problems, to tackle the hard problems that are so broad in scope, so grand in scale, that they're never going to be solved by an individual discipline alone. They're never going to be solved by academics working in a silo. I'm talking about problems like ensuring our water, food, and energy security, about monitoring our aging transportation infrastructure, about helping our growing aging population remain healthy and independent longer. These are the challenges that we're tackling at FAU with partnership from Telit. So we're organized into three program areas. We have a program area in infrastructure systems, we have a program area in marine and environment, and we have a program area in health and behavior. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some real IoT applications that we fielded in each of these areas with Telit. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I normally, at this point in the conversation, I spend some time talking about the future of IoT. But last night I removed that portion of the deck because it doesn't make any sense to talk about what could be, what if, what then, what later, because the future of IoT is here today. The future of IoT is now. There is tremendous enthusiasm across academia, industry, and government that has been driving rapid technological advancements in technology that makes it easier and easier to build IoT apps. It has never been easier to build IoT applications than it is today. So if we look at just the past few years, we have seen a wave of new technology, new devices, new chipsets, new hardware platforms designed to make it easier to connect things. That was followed by a wave of software platforms, APIs, libraries, tool sets, IoT enablement platforms, designed to connect those things into networks of things and to make sense of the data that they produce. Well, great hardware, great software results in great applications. And we've seen a host of new applications that have the potential to cross-cut sectors, to cross-cut industries, to revolutionize markets. So if you hear people talking about the future of IoT, keep in mind that the future of IoT is now. This is the time. So the first application that I want to spend some time talking about is focused on infrastructure systems management, specifically on stormwater monitoring. And I like this application because I think it tells an interesting and perhaps surprising story about how IoT can be used in municipalities to streamline operations, to monitor ROI. I think it's an exciting application. So the picture that you see up on the screen, this is a picture of Aiken, South Carolina. Aiken is in west central South Carolina, and it's a historic city. And like many historic cities, it's kind of grown organically over time without a lot of pre-planning, without a lot of city planning. And the infrastructure below that city, the stormwater infrastructure, has likewise grown organically over time. And it's resulted in a scenario where there's a very large catch basin that is across the whole of the city that empties out into two 10-foot diameter pipes, which happen to be in the directly adjacent Hitchcock Woods. Now, if you spend some time talking with folks who've lived in Aiken long enough, they'll tell you stories about what it was like to grow up in Aiken and to play in Hitchcock Woods and to spend time walking back and forth across this little meandering stream that made its way through this urban forest. Well, today, in the course of less than one generation, that little stream, Sand River, has become a canyon. That canyon is 70 foot deep, it's 30 foot wide, it's carved entirely out of stormwater. Aiken is a very forward-thinking city. And they looked at this problem and they said, well, this is impacting one of the country's largest urban forests. It's affecting drinking water because the wetlands are being covered in sediment and they're losing their capacity to treat the stormwater before it ultimately becomes drinking water in the savanna. So the city wanted to invest in best management practices for stormwater, focusing on green infrastructure practices. So these are things like cisterns and bioswales and curb cuts and porous pavement. If you don't know anything about those, that's okay. They're all designed to do the same thing. Keep the water in the soil. The problem, of course, is that to retrofit stormwater infrastructure is incredibly expensive. And the city needs excellent tools to be able to determine what is the return on their investment for installing these BMPs, where should they install the BMPs, and what is the long-term impact not only on water quantity out of the outflows, but what is the impact on water quality so they can optimize over time. We worked with the city to build an IoT application that provides a full water balance for the city. So this infrastructure that we put together provides a full water balance. It's a collection of sensors networked through 433 megahertz radios, low power, 900 megahertz radios, low power, cellular, Wi-Fi, a host of technologies, so that we can capture the amount of precipitation that occurs, the amount of precipitation that is trapped within the soil, and the amount and quality of water that makes its way through the stormwater system into the outflow in Hitchcock Woods. So that over time, as city managers have new best management practices installed, we can provide analytics to the city to inform them on the return that they're seeing for their investment. Now, we also had to build some tools, and it took us a fair amount of time to build those tools for the city managers to make sense of the huge amount of data being collected through this system. So we're doing dense instrumentation of the sewer itself, the soil substrate, we have meteorological stations. It took us about 3 years to build a private cloud infrastructure to provide this information to the city, to store this information, web portals on top of it. And when we transitioned this system to Boca in 2015, we met with Telit, and in the course of about 2 weeks, we were able to convert that infrastructure over to the DeviceWise platform. And I mention this because this 2-week conversion with just a couple of folks working on this, that's a testament to how easy it was to work with the DeviceWise platform, and it's a testament to the old adage that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you're considering redeveloping or you're considering developing back-end infrastructure for IoT, that's already been done. You can invest your energy in other areas. The next project I'm going to talk about is in our marine and environment area. Today in the US, we're going to consume 408 billion, with a B, gallons of water. So if we put that into perspective, for everyone in the room, that's 1,430 gallons of water per day, and 1,430 gallons of water per day for everyone who's not in the room. That's enough water for 8 billion bathtubs, enough water to fill the Empire State Building 1,470 times. It's a lot of water. We've got 325 million people in the US alone. By 2051, we're going to have more than 350 million. When we have this growing tension between the supply of fresh water and the demand for fresh water, we have to come to the realization that natural resources are not somehow special. These are resources that are scarce, and to make good management decisions about scarce resources, to price them, to allocate them, to sell them, we need excellent data about the resource. This is a problem that calls out for IoT. About 10 years ago, long before we had the pleasure of working with Telit directly, we began building an IoT system. At this time, we called it an environmental macroscope. This is before I think we knew the words IoT, before we knew Internet of Things. So we call this an environmental macroscope, and it's intended to evoke in your imagination the picture of an instrument that has a broad lens. So it's kind of the inverse of a microscope. A microscope, at the time it was invented, was magical because it provided visibility into a world that had never been seen because it was too small. A macroscope is an instrument that has a broad lens that allows you to take in key hydrological and environmental parameters at massive scales, and it too can have a magical impact by providing visibility into a world that was invisible not because it was too small, but because it was too large. So we built this environmental macroscope. We've deployed it and we've maintained it now for a very long time in the Savannah River Basin. We have this instrument deployed from the headwaters in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, running all the way down to the port in Savannah. We're measuring 312 river miles, looking primarily at water quality parameters along the full main stem of that waterway, plus dense instrumentation in 2 of the watersheds that drain down into that waterway, one in an industrial corridor, one in an agricultural corridor. The data that's collected through this type of system allows water managers to time water withdrawals more effectively, to understand the potential impact of a new nuclear reactor being installed on the river, to price, to allocate, to make more informed decisions. And in the context of natural resource management, that's remarkable. But for folks who manage scarce resources every day, this is the story that you know well. We make the best decisions about our resources only when we have excellent data about them. Otherwise, we're guessing in the dark. So we built this system over the course of about 10 years, and it's been one of the most exciting projects for us to work on because it's involved so many different players. It's brought so many different teams to the table. Federal agencies, state agencies, computer engineers, computer scientists, mechanical engineers, environmental toxicologists, river ecologists, applied statisticians, all kinds of folks who need to come together to be able to build, deploy, and use this kind of system. Now, for the Telit historians in the audience, this project began some time ago, and there's an oldie but goodie referenced up here. It's a GM862. That was the first cellular module that we used up in the Savannah. And believe it or not, we still have a number of stations that continue to operate on the GM862. And I've heard threats several times from Telit folks, they're going to take that 2G network away, but it's still going up in the headwaters of the Savannah. We've upgraded, of course, over time, but that tech still continues to work for us. We have a great opportunity that we're taking advantage of this quarter. With the support of our friends at South Florida Water Management, at Wells Fargo, at Telit, and at the National Science Foundation, we're beginning to take this environmental macroscope, this tech that we built and deployed in the Savannah River Basin, and we're deploying that in the Kissimmee River. The Kissimmee River has a very interesting ecological history. This was a long meandering river system, not so unlike the Savannah River, that ran from central Florida down to Lake Okeechobee, and it kind of had all these oxbows that twisted and turned on its way. In the 1960s, that river system was channelized by the Army Corps of Engineers to reduce flooding or to mitigate flooding in central Florida, and it was hugely effective in that regard. So there is today a straight channelized cut that disconnects the oxbows that runs from central Florida to Lake Okeechobee. And while effective in controlling flooding, it had long-term ecological consequences that took decades and decades to manifest. So in the 1990s, this river system began restoration as part of a federal mandate. And part of that federal mandate says that during and after the restoration of the Kissimmee River, you must perform intensive monitoring. But what it meant, what was possible for intensive monitoring in the 1990s is fundamentally different than what it means to do intensive monitoring today. This represents an incredible opportunity for the IoT community. It represents an incredible opportunity for the state of Florida to provide the proverbial river upon a hill, to provide a world model for how IoT can be applied in the context of river and ecological restoration. So why is that valuable across the world? Well, the ecological fate of the Kissimmee River will be mirrored in like water systems all over the world that are directly adjacent to burgeoning industrial and agricultural and urban corridors. So this is an opportunity to provide a world model that can be adapted everywhere. So we're extremely excited to begin work on that this quarter. I'm going to close by talking briefly about two applications in our health and behavior area. And they're both focused on reducing healthcare-associated infection, but through two different strategies. So the first builds upon an idea that I like very much. The idea that sensing technology, that IoT, that the data that's collected from these networks, it can be used not only for actuating our environments, for actuating our assembly lines, for actuating our things, but it can be used to affect behavioral change in individuals and populations for the good. So a couple of years ago, we were contacted by a major medical university, and they described a problem that they were having in one of their orthopedic rooms. And the problem that they were having was that in this particular orthopedic room, they were experiencing a higher than normal rate of post-operative infection. And they hypothesized that the reason they were seeing a higher than normal rate of post-op infection was because the nature of the surgeries that took place in that room caused the docs and nurses and staff members to open and close the doors too often during active procedures. And this was later validated through manual observation. So the hospital system came to us and talked with us about what IoT solutions could be brought to bear on this problem to not only inform quality assurance and quality control programs at the hospital, but to provide real-time feedback to the folks working in the OR to encourage better compliance through behavioral modification, behavioral change. We built a very simple system for them. So this simple system consists of wireless reed switch devices in a small enclosure that are mounted on the exterior of the OR, so they're mounted on the door frames. We installed a small number of wireless base stations, and we built software on top of that that connects the collected data to the hospital management system, the Epic healthcare management system, if you're familiar with that system, one of the largest, most popular systems used in healthcare. We began with the installation in one OR that quickly grew to use in 7 ORs, and we have the potential to expand that across the whole of the facility. And the information that's being collected through that system is not only being used and rolled into the quality assurance, quality control programs for the whole of the hospital to monitor and control compliance, but it's also being used through large format displays to provide information on the number of times that the outer door and the inner door are opened, and that the outer door and inner door are opened simultaneously, resulting in pressure loss and the potential for germs to make their way into the OR during an active procedure. So this provides feedback to the docs and nurses that encourages better compliance. So this is an application we're excited about as well. Now I'm going to close with a similar application. We're in the process of developing a new system to improve hand hygiene monitoring in healthcare facilities. In the US alone, annually, the National Institutes of Health estimate that there are 2 million cases of healthcare-associated infection. So these are infections that result directly as a result of receiving healthcare, of staying at a healthcare facility. Of the 2 million cases of healthcare-associated infection each year, 90,000 of those result in death. If we consider only the direct costs, not the indirect, but only the direct costs, they're estimated at between $25 billion and $45 billion every year. Now, the World Health Organization maintains a now nearly decade-old campaign focused on improving hand hygiene, and it's based on the simple observation that the hands are the primary transport vector for germs in a healthcare facility. And so focusing on improved hand hygiene is critical to reducing healthcare-associated infection rates. Central to their messaging has been this notion of something they call the 5 moments, the 5 moments of hand hygiene. The touch points that occur in a healthcare facility that trigger the need for a hand scrub or a hand wash. So this could be after touching a patient, or it could be before engaging in a sterile procedure and other points of touch. Now, this is a problem that is significant, that has a lot of attention within the healthcare industry, and there are commercial companies who are building solutions focused on improved hand hygiene performance. But those systems are based on gross monitoring. They're based on coarse-grained sensing. So the actuation of a faucet, or the placement of hands beneath the faucet, or detecting someone walking across a threshold without having washed their hands first, and perhaps some kind of auditory or visual trigger. None of these tackle what the WHO has identified as being most important, the 5 moments. We're working now with a startup company in Boca called Energy Bionics to build a system that addresses specifically these 5 moments. We're building a touch sensing application that spans the whole of a healthcare facility to detect the points of touch when a doc, when a patient, when a nurse touches a particular instrument in the room, or touches a bed frame, or touches a patient. And we aggregate that information within the healthcare management system to be able to determine those 5 moments of hand hygiene that are so essential in reducing healthcare-associated infection and reducing the enormous human and economic costs associated with those infections. So this is another fantastic IoT application that perhaps you haven't thought of before. I really like that last application, and I like it, this idea of ultra-dense, spatial, transparent sensing. And I like it because I think that it typifies where IoT will be 20 years or 30 years from now. So the idea that the pervasive computing vision will be a reality, that sensing, computing, communication, it will be transparently woven throughout the world around us. That our clothing, that our things, that our environments, that our floors, that they'll transparently detect and learn about us, that they'll silently chatter with one another to learn about us and to silently and transparently optimize our everyday experience. So there's a great quote from Arthur C. Clarke that says that any sufficiently advanced technology should be indistinguishable from magic, and that is the magical potential of IoT. So again, I want to thank Fred, I want to thank Telit and the rest of the Telit team for the opportunity to talk with everyone. Thanks very much for your attention today. For my FAU friends in the audience, go Owls.